JJ Redick taking Kendrick Perkins to task for implying that there might be a racial bias in a group of MVP voters that is predominantly white in the NBA. I just want to strike a pitch right down the middle of the road here that it's possible that Kendrick Perkins is making a correct argument poorly. Would not be the first time that that's happened. And it's possible that JJ Redick could be one of the many legions of white people in this country who are so sort of offended or scared of the word racism or being termed racist or their friends being termed racist that he's not willing to have an actual serious conversation about racial bias. And both of those things can be true. Tyler, your thoughts when you saw this clip? Because I feel like it was a response to Perk, but you and Bomani have basically been making the same argument that Jokic can be MVP worthy and it still be the case that there's racial bias in MVP voters. Those things are not mutually exclusive at all.
Right. I feel like JJ Redick on this one, I think he missed the mark. I feel like he opened the door to allow the worst fucking demographic to weigh in on this subject. All right, so we got to take the shit from jump. We got to talk about Perk's comments. We got to talk about JJ's reaction to those comments, right? So about a week or so ago, Perk made these comments where he pointed out that Dirk, Nash, and Jokic are the only MVPs in history to never be top 10 in scoring the year they won MVP. And now I'm not 100% clear
since 1990. Jackson.
Yeah, since 1990. Now I'm not 100% clear on Perk's point, but it seems his point was that, voters move the goalposts for these white guys to win their MVP. I'm not really riding with Perk on that one. I think that all three of those guys earned those MVPs. I do, and I think that there's possibly a case to be made that voters might actually be a bit more demanding of white players they select to actually let in the MVP club, but we'll come back to that. So JJ goes on First Take, right? And, JJ's got this thing where, he's like, the self-appointed voice of reason on First Take. And it's for sure often needed, right? He's quite often nails that shit. And he is indeed the voice of reason on that show plenty of times. But I feel like he only made shit worse this time. He comes on First Take and he just absolutely reminds us that he's a white guy from Duke, right? like he gets up there and he says that Perk, quote unquote, created a narrative that doesn't exist in reality about racial bias existing in NBA voting circles, and says that Perk said that NBA voters are racist. And I feel like JJ missed the mark with that shit terribly. And what JJ did is what so many white people do on topics like this whenever it's suggested, hey man, racial bias might be influencing shit here. They jump off the deep end like, oh, so you're saying these people are racist? Why are you saying these people are racist? And it's like, bro, JJ, you view yourself as the voice of reason on this show, but you just got on some sensationalism shit too right here, right? Like, if you truly believe you're the voice of reason on that show, get out your white ass feelings, engage in some dialogue with Perk, and see exactly what he was getting at, right? Because there's a difference between racial bias and racism, and Perk never flat out said it was racism. So for JJ to put those words in Perk's mouth was irresponsible, in my opinion.
He's also many times, just to briefly pause, he's also many times understood that Perk is often making a real argument that he's not using the correct words to make. So, yeah, and I think it would have been fair for him to extend the charity to Perk of maybe he's not articulating this in a way that most people or that I would agree with, but is there merit to what his actual argument is?
Right, absolutely. So yeah, so like I said, I feel that JJ putting those words in Perk's mouth was irresponsible on a number of levels, because now you got like real life racist dickheads like Clay Travis, championing you and hijacking your message and parading you as some racism denier, right? Like, JJ's supposed to be the guy to add some nuance to these conversations, but he just muddied this shit up even more. And he allowed, like I said, the worst type of people to chime in on this debate now. And it's not some, hey man, a broken clock is right twice a day if Clay Travis agrees with you, because guys like that never admit when race does actually impact some shit, right?
There's no hands on the clock. There's no hands on the clock from Clay Travis and Jason Whitlock. And
right.
Shit, bro.
They've got one fucking song that they play on repeat, bro. But the fact of the matter is this. At this point in the season, Jokic is my MVP, all right? He's putting up like 24, 12, and 10 on like 60% shooting. He's fucking ridiculous. A season for the ages. But the precedent has always been that if you win 3 straight MVPs, you have to have gotten a ring during that run. You can say that precedent is stupid. I won't argue that, but it's a precedent that has stood throughout the NBA's history. And, I mentioned when we discussed this before that, of course, we shouldn't keep making the same mistakes in the present just because we made them in the past. That's a shitty way to go about things. But there's for sure a discussion to be had about why NBA voters who are 80, 90% white seem way more willing to break this precedent for a white player than they have been for black players in the past. It's a valid question to ask, why are these voters more comfortable with Jokic being the precedent breaker here than they were with Giannis possibly being that a few seasons ago? It's a valid question to ask, why is Jokic going to be the first 3-time MVP in about 40 years since Larry Bird, and we have the entire careers of the 2 best basketball players ever sandwiched in between that. So these are valid questions to ask. And they're valid questions to ask of a voting constituency that is overwhelmingly white. And JJ's reaction here is just a prime example of how white people need to get out their feelings during these discussions and stop writing off the possibility of racial bias being in play just because blatant racism isn't, apparent here.
Whenever white people
well said.
Whenever white people hear racial bias or racism and all that, they think of a nigga carrying a whipping, you know what I mean? They go,
it has to be overt, blatant as hell,
far, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, because your ignorance can cause these issues, just like JJ exhibited. You know what I mean? It's not because you are out here fuck black people. You know what I'm saying? You ain't calling black people niggas. Nobody's saying that. It's just saying your ignorance, you know what I'm saying? Your lack of understanding can cause these issues. You know what I mean? It's just 3 years ago. Just 3 years ago with Giannis, we were having the same conversation we're not having with Joker. 3 years ago, bro. Very recent. And you forget all of a sudden? That is proof that there's an issue here. You know what I mean? And then Giannis came on and got the chip and dropped 70. Or 50, whatever fuck, you know what I'm saying?
50, 14, 5 blocks.
50, yeah, 50. You know what I'm saying? It's just for him to say that when that happened just 3 years ago is so wild. And also, man, if you don't understand, just because he said talking about racial bias, he's not saying you're out here moving with hatred. You know what I'm saying? He's saying yo, you might have a blind spot here. Let's rap about this. You know what I'm saying?
Which would actually have been an incredible thing to see.
Incredible conversation. And that would have been the JJ Redick we have seen him be on ESPN, where he's let's have a, you know what I mean? Not the dude that, like you said, being sensationalist and, and saying and putting words in Perk's mouth that he didn't say. Like Tyler said, there's a difference between racial bias and racism. JJ doesn't know the difference. And it may be because you and
they
your
didn't
white
have that
ass
class at Duke, John. You don't think they didn't have that class at Duke?
Racial sensitivity at Duke.
You know what I'm saying? Probably not. JJ's the blackest motherfucker in them classes. You know what I mean? But anyway, nah. You know what I'm saying? It's just come on, bro. It like you said, he got in there and muddied it up. It didn't have to be this way. And being who JJ has been on this show constantly, and it seems how we at least perceived him in the situation, he would have come with an open mind and willing to have a conversation. And like you said, giving Perk some grace, understanding that sometimes, he's not the most eloquent. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I think it's like you said, I don't think he came out here trying to get, Clay Travis, to rah his ass, you know what I mean?
I don't think he did it all, but
that's how it ends up.
But I think Tyler's exactly right that I do hope that caused some introspection. I know that the three of us are close friends. Tyler and I had a segment where we were calling John a Republican as a joke, and
with some damn peanut butter. We are fucking extreme.
I want
to apologize to you about that, John. We were ridiculous with that.
Listen, and some white people who listen to the show were on Twitter making jokes to John about him being a Republican,
and they're muted now because I wanted to slap the fucking shit out of them.
But listen, if you say something that has Clay Travis fucking trying to lead a mob against your friend or your colleague, that has to cause some introspection to go, you know what? Maybe there's even more electricity on this third rail than I realized,
And I hope he does. I hope it does cause that. Because if not,
I like JJ a lot. I hope so too.
I like JJ, and I like the role he's played. But if not, that's.
But there's a danger to your brand going from being an insightful, intelligent guy to being the guy who's always right. Right. And
yeah,
that's
exactly.
like,
and I don't think he'll
that's
ever
Neil
be
deGrasse
a
Tyson on Twitter. Right.
Right.
But that could be JJ Redick too. That's like, you're not always going to be right. And you're not always going to have more perspective, especially in talking about race, than Kendrick Perkins, who played in fucking Boston as a fucking country has black it. Like, there's people you can learn from out there, even if you are a really smart person. And you gotta understand that, especially around matters of race when you're talking about the NBA. Because that's like, you could read every book in history, as you could be the smartest guy ever as JJ Redick. You don't have a perspective of the other side of the coin in race relations in the NBA, and that's totally okay.